Chateau Napier, perched at the top of the hill like a jewel in Leura's crown. 47 years of stories, experiences and refined hospitality that came to an abrupt end. What happened, and what was it like in its heyday? By the early 1900s, Sydney's pollution had begun to weigh heavily on many of its people. The air hung thick with the grime of coal-fueled industry. For many, the Blue Mountains offered a welcome reprieve, a retreat where the air was fresh and the landscape itself promised relief from the city's suffocating breath. The allure of towering cliffs, endless forests and cool mountain breezes was more than mere scenery. It was believed to restore health and vitality. Resorts, hotels and guest houses began to rise, each one offering a taste of mountain life. Days were filled with tea parties on shaded verandas, excursions to waterfalls and lookouts, and dances and musicals that carried into the evening. The newspaper even advised its female readers that the mountain mist was of great benefit, softening the skin and producing a blooming complexion. Sensing opportunity, entrepreneurs turned their gaze towards Katoomba and Leura, eager to shape this new health retreat movement into a lucrative lifestyle trade. Chateau Napier wouldn't have happened without this guy. Justin McSweeney was born in Unehunga, New Zealand in 1852, and success seemed to follow him wherever he went. In Sydney, he built himself a reputation as a railway works contractor, civil engineer and property developer. By 1894, he established Kernbank, a three-storey residence in Arncliffe. Around 1904, McSweeney looked to the Blue Mountains, where he'd secured an 80-acre land grant. At its edge, he built a residence for himself and his wife, Emily Dawson, which he named Rakea, after a town and river on New Zealand's South Island. It still stands to this day at 90 Railway Parade, though its rooms now serve a different purpose as the home of Leura Dental. Leura and Katoomba were already blossoming as mountain retreats, their cool air and grand hotels drawing Sydney's elite in search of rest and refinement. The Carrington Hotel, originally opened as the Great Western Hotel in 1883, had set the tone for elegant escapes. In 1910, McSweeney added his own vision to the landscape with the Napier, a guest house built on the highest point in Leura. Overlooking the town from its commanding position, and bounded by Leura Mall, Bathurst Road and Britton Street, it stood as both a symbol of McSweeney's enterprise and of the mountain's growing allure. It's hard to imagine that the Lethbridge sisters, already running Leura House as a guest house just behind McSweeney's new venture, were particularly pleased. With the rise of the Napier, part of the valley and mountain view their guests enjoyed was suddenly claimed by McSweeney's imposing construction. When the grand opening came a week before Christmas in 1910, it was anything but modest. McSweeney's connections were on full display. The Lord Mayor of Sydney, Alan Taylor, presided over the ceremony, joined by Katoomba's first mayor, Harry Goyder, along with more than 130 local dignitaries and a contingent of Sydney's prominent businessmen. The event was as much a declaration of influence as it was a celebration of a new guest house. In the days that followed, the Napier became the talk of the town, its name carried on the lips of locals and visitors alike, curiosity rising around the latest jewel in Leura's crown. So, what was this place really like? Entering from Leura Mall, you walked up a short path and passed through the rendered arch, with curved walls topped with balustrades framing lawns, manicured hedges and flower gardens dotted with cypress and cedar. Another approach climbed from Bathurst Road, leading first to the tennis courts before continuing up steps to a higher terrace. There, among glasshouses and greenery, quiet corners invited guests to pause and relax in the cool mountain air. The Napier boasted 57 rooms, each of them spacious, tastefully furnished and opening onto broad balconies that wrapped around the house. Wide, airy corridors stretched through the Federation-style building, and on every floor were bathrooms and lavatories fitted with the latest modern conveniences. A mark of refinement and comfort that placed the guest house firmly among the most fashionable retreats of its day. The main hall of the Napier greeted its guests with an air of grandeur, its walls clad in rich, solid oak panels of embossed copper that glowed warmly in the light. The reception room was decorated in the Chippendale style, an elaborate marriage of Gothic, Rococo and Oriental influence that captivated 18th century England and Australia, now lending a touch of elegance to this mountain retreat. The dining room was the undisputed heart of the house. Dark oak furnishings gave it a stately feel, and beneath its high ceiling as many as 80 guests could dine together. Meals were served with silverware specially embossed with the name of the guest house, a subtle reminder that they were part of something distinguished. And then there was the dancing saloon, large enough to set 50 dancers in motion beneath an ornate candelabra that glittered from an embossed ceiling. Wall mirrors reflected the movement and light, amplifying the sense of occasion. Next door, a billiard room awaited, complete with an air-on unsmithed table. Such was the popularity of the Napier that in 1914 a second building was erected on its western side. A two-storey structure of rendered brick, expanding its capacity to accommodate 150 guests. From its lofty perch, the Napier commanded views in every direction. To the west, the land was dotted with attractive residences with their red, blue and grey roofs. Looking north and east, Mount Hay and its neighbouring peaks rise above the winding Gross Valley, stretching towards the distant lowlands. And to the south, the vista opens wide across Leura to the rugged form of Mount Solitary, standing sentinel amid the blue haze of Jamison Valley, framed by golden sandstone cliffs, shadowed gullies and endless wilderness. Although McSweeney held the title of owner, it was Mrs. J. McManus, a relative, who oversaw the running of the Napier. With the help of her two daughters and a staff of servants, she carried out the daily work of hospitality. It had, in fact, been her idea to establish a guest house in Leura, and for 25 years she guided its fortunes with steady dedication. The Napier was supplied with dairy, poultry and fresh produce grown on surrounding properties, one of which was the Braes, also located in Leura less than a kilometre away. It was owned by the McSweeney family until 1943. Today it's privately owned, yet opens during the annual Garden Festival the first week of October. In 1915, the guest house was given a new name, Chateau Napier. A few years later in 1919, Justin McSweeney passed away at the age of 67. The property remained in family hands and his widow Emily continued to live in their house on Railway Parade well into the years after the Second World War. In 1935, manageress Mrs. McManus, now remarried at Mrs. O'Brien, passed on her role to someone named W. Brewster, who managed the chateau during the war years. Following the attack on Sydney Harbour by Japanese submarines in 1942, the Sydney Church of England Grammar School evacuated their students to Leura, and for a while they lived at Chateau Napier before moving again to a property further down Leura Mall. After the war, the business resumed operation as a guest house. It changed hands again, first under a Miss Elliott and then under Wiseman and Bourne. As well as being a guest house, Chateau Napier had a hall which was used by the community for functions, meetings and musical events. Chateau Napier wasn't without its share of incidents, some of which found their way into the newspapers. In June 1947, while 40 guests slept soundly in their rooms, an intruder slipped quietly through the corridors. He broke into several rooms, stealing a watch from one, though he curiously ignored a handbag beside it that held a considerable sum of cash. From another, he swiped a radio, overlooking £40 lying close at hand, and from a third he made away with a suitcase of clothing. His late-night spree came to an abrupt end when he attempted yet another door, only to startle the lady inside. She switched on her light and the man fled into the night. An earlier report from March 1941 told of a different misfortune. A guest, Arthur Edward Hempel of Parramatta, was found dead on the floor in his room, still dressed in his pyjamas. He was in his 60s, and while the cause of death remained uncertain, police declared there were no suspicious circumstances. Chateau Napier took pride in making its guests safe, especially should a fire break out within its walls. It was confidently said that no house on the mountains was better equipped for fire than Chateau Napier. Careful architecture and good building regulations saw to that. From every vantage point and from every corner of the buildings there were broad and easy fire escapes. Plus, there were 6 hose pipes, each with its own tap fixed to the main water supply. Nothing could go wrong, right? The summer of 1957 brought with it the harshest drought the mountains had seen in 70 years. On 16 November, flames broke out at Bullaburra, Wentworth Falls and Leura. Hundreds of firefighters fought desperately, saving dozens of homes from destruction, but the danger was only beginning. The next day, fire swept into Lawson, swelling into a 4-kilometre front that tore down through the mid-mountains towards Hazelbrook and Springwood. They were declared the worst bushfires the Blue Mountains had ever recorded. By 30 November, new fires raged through the Grosse Valley, Lithgow, Kapiti and Megalong Valley. Then, on the 2nd of December, the danger turned to Katoomba and Leura. Late that morning, flames were sighted on Minnehaha Road and North Katoomba. By early afternoon, fire had broken out again on Queens Road, less than a kilometre from the heart of Leura. Fierce northwesterly winds drove the flames straight towards the upper end of Leura Mall, devouring 23 houses in its path. Smoke thickened above the town, while the tolling bells of the fire brigade carried over the chaos. Shops and apartments across from Leura Station burned, and the Baptist church beside the Alexandra Hotel was lost to the flames. North Leura was alight, and firefighters struggled to contain the fire that was now completely out of control. Ash and embers swept through the air as families fought to save what they could. Some dragged possessions from their homes, others beat the flames with wet sacks and branches, anything to hold the fire at bay. Perched high on its hill, Chateau Napier stood directly in the fire's path. It had no defence, and guests frantically grabbed what they could and fled. Flames consumed the guest house in moments before sweeping down the hill, destroying Leura Public School and homes as the inferno pressed on towards Wentworth Falls. By the time the fires were quenched, more than 170 houses lay in ruins, alongside schools, shops and businesses. Hundreds were left homeless. Chateau Napier was reduced to a hollow shell. In time, what remained was demolished, leaving only traces. The brick foundations, retaining walls, the tennis court terrace, steps, remnants of its gardens, and the now iconic rendered arch that once welcomed guests to one of the grandest retreats in the mountains. So, what's happening with it now? In truth, very little. Actually, nothing. In 2014, proposals were submitted on behalf of the then new landowner Louise Waterhouse, seeking alterations to the local environmental plan. The following year, approval was granted, with hopes that the land might soon welcome a landmark building, an architectural statement worthy of its position at the village gateway. That vision is yet to materialise. The land remains vacant, and the ruins of Chateau Napier continue to weather and crumble, silent reminders of a once grand retreat now lost to time.